everybody. Welcome back to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Whitman. We have a full slate of Week 4 NFL games to talk about here. So let's get into it. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do hit that like button. If you're listening to the podcast version, rate and review really helps me out. And then also, guys, this show is brought to you by my Patreon. It's patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. If you want to support the show, you want to get in on the exclusive Patreon mailbag, do it over there on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. We will end the show with the Patreon exclusive mailbag. All right, let's get into it. Starting with the Thursday night football game. This was a complete disaster. This game probably looked better on the schedule when they made it a Thursday night game, but man, this was terrible. Quite possibly the two worst teams in football playing here this week on Thursday night football. But from the Broncos' point of view, their season's done, right? They've completely just been decimated by injuries at every position. Hopefully at some point they get Drew Lock back and can get a fair evaluation of him and know whether or not he's your guy heading into next year. That's really all the Broncos season is about at this point. But for the Jets, I mean, just complete organizational dysfunction. It's been well documented, starting with the ownership all the way down the leadership. It's terrible, but it showed on the football field on Thursday, which is obviously not what you want to see. There is no excuse for the Jets to lose on a short week to Brett Rypien. Brett Rypien in his first NFL start having to go across the country, again, on a short week. No excuse. And to be fair, the Jets, play for play, outplayed the Broncos, as they should have. More yardage, more first downs, better quarterback play, everything. But the lack of discipline and poor coaching shined in this game for the Jets. It starts on the offensive side of the ball. Adam Gase, terrible play calling, per usual. Just the decision to kick the field goal on 4th and 1 ended up losing them the game, in my opinion. Late in that game, go for it, go for the win. And then this was more about the defense for me. I mean, I've been very positive around Greg Williams. I thought he did a great job last year. But this was one of the worst coached defenses I've ever seen. And certainly the frustration that these players have playing for this organization is starting to show on the football field. Just look at the amount of after-the-play penalties. Those happen from a lack of team unity. Those are selfish penalties. Those happen when you don't really care what happens to your team, when you're shoving the quarterback after the play, when you're ripping guys down by their face masks. And Greg Williams has a history of this stuff. He doesn't, frankly, care about this stuff. He might be a selfish coach. Everyone is out here playing for themselves right now, and it's showing. There's no unity. There's a lack of discipline with the tackling. They're giving up cutback lanes. It's just a disaster. I would mostly put this on the defensive side of the ball. You know, Darnold was actually okay in this game. It wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination. But, you know, let's slap a big old hashtag Jamal Adams was right here. The Jets are in complete organizational dysfunction, like you won't see probably for another decade. It's got to be a complete organizational overhaul. I think starting now. I don't know why they brought Adam Gase back this week. The players clearly don't want to play for him. And that brings me to Trevor Lawrence. And this team is clearly heading towards having the number 1 overall draft pick. And if you're Trevor Lawrence, why would you come out of Clemson to come and play for this organization and this ownership that has just totally thrown Sam Darnold under the bus? Or at least thrown him in front of the bus to just get steamrolled. I mean, think about Andrew Luck. He came back to Stanford for his senior year. Trevor Lawrence, I think pretty undoubtedly the best quarterback prospect to come out since Andrew Luck. He took a stand. I mean, there was other reasons. He was going to Stanford. He wanted his degree. But Trevor Lawrence, man, I would think about it very strongly if the Jets don't right now start saying we have an organizational problem that we need to fix, which with their ownership, they're not going to do that. I don't know why they're standing by Adam Gase, but as an organization, if you are Trevor Lawrence, why would you want that to be the team in charge of pretty much your career? It would be a 5-year stint with this organization, and then you would get free. Well, that's not even true. They could tag you for 2 or 3 more years. As a quarterback, you are stuck with the team that drafts you And what is 1 year in college where you can maybe go and become the most accomplished college quarterback ever, getting your degree? What is that? What is 1 year of that compared to getting with any other organization? I think it's a reality for the Jets that they need to take a real self-check at this thing and say, we need to show Trevor Lawrence that this is the right place for him. And I'm not giving up on Sam Darnold. I think that they could very well stick with Sam Darnold if they say bring in Eric Bieniemy or bring in a different coach and start putting pieces around him. I think Darnold, he's only 23 years old. I think there's room for him to turn this thing around with help. But the reason I think that if they have the number one pick, it's so easily the choice to go Trevor Lawrence is I think you could flip Darnold for a first-round pick. I really do. And the thing is, if, say they bounce back with Sam Darnold, well, he's on the fourth year of his contract right away. You got to pay him if he's good, probably in year 2 of the rebuild, you got to pay him $35+ million. Well, Trevor Lawrence is probably just as good as Sam Darnold day one and has a higher upside because of the arm talent and all that stuff. And he just doesn't have a record of making kind of boneheaded mistakes that Darnold has going back to college. You could probably flip Darnold for a late first, say the Pittsburgh Steelers or the New England Patriots, something like that. You wouldn't trade him interdivision, but maybe they would. I don't know. They traded Bill Belichick interdivision. That didn't work out. But it financially and logistically speaking, it makes sense to just clean house, wish Sam Darnold the best, say this isn't working, and go that route. And then you get a first-round pick to spend on an offensive lineman or a receiver or whatever, something that you can much more easily get with that 20th pick or whatever. Spend that first overall pick on the quarterback. So the Jets are a mess. That's what I would do. Fire Gase. Unfortunately, I don't think the ownership for the Jets has the same foresight and, frankly, character to acknowledge that this thing needs to get overhauled fast. But let's move on. The next game is the Chargers-Bucks game. And there's two big stories here. For one, Justin Herbert is looking pretty good. So I was not a Justin Herbert guy coming out of the draft. I had a second-round grade on him. My comp for him was Paxton Lynch, and I'm not ashamed of it. I didn't like his college tape. A lot of other people didn't like his college tape. But I will say that my high comp on him was Jared Goff, and he's looking much more like a Jared Goff than Paxton Lynch. That much is very clear. I think I'm getting very comfortable saying that it does not look like Herbert will be a straight-up bust. He looks like an NFL quarterback. He looks much more comfortable than I expected in year one. He's processing at a relatively high level. The arm talent is as good as advertised. He's been amazingly accurate, especially downfield. Some of these throws he's making are elite throws. And people disagreed with me when I said that Herbert, the second he gets drafted, will have a top 3, top 5 arm in the NFL. That is showing. Like, his arm talent is right there with Matthew Stafford, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes. He's right there with it. And he's accurate with that arm. So he's got some really good traits, right? He's seeing the field with his first reads pretty well. He's got an amazing arm. He's been accurate. And, he had sporadic accuracy in college. It's been 3 weeks. We'll see how that plays out over time. But he looks pretty confident in there, standing in the pocket and throwing strikes down the field. So overall, I don't think he'll be a bust. But where I think I missed the most with Justin Herbert, or where my evaluation on him seems to have been the most wrong, he looks comfortable in the pocket. And I was thinking back on it, and I saw a tweet today from, I think it was Sam Monson with PFF, but could have been someone else. At Oregon, his final years, Justin Herbert was pressured just 7 times a game. They're getting rid of the ball quickly. They had one of the best offensive lines in college football. He didn't have to worry about pressure because he almost never had it. He's getting more than double that now with the Chargers. 15 pressures per game. It's about league average per game. A little more than league average, probably. So now he's forced to feel the pocket and be more worried about it, basically. When he's at Oregon, he's getting rid of the ball quickly, tons of horizontal passes, and when they do drop back, he was getting phenomenal protection. Now he knows, going up to the line of scrimmage, my clock's got to pick up. And if that first read isn't there, I need to start moving. And that's where I think the evaluation wasn't there with Herbert. He has really impressed me with that stuff. It hasn't been flawless. It has not been flawless. This is still something new to him. But he has much more of that it factor about him in the pocket moving, and I think that's going to give him such a great chance at succeeding moving forward and becoming a really good quarterback. And, you know, I just want to point out, like, that was a criticism I had of Daniel Jones, and I had a similar grade on Daniel Jones. I also had a second-round grade on Daniel Jones. I liked Herbert more because of the upside with the arm talent and all that stuff. But I just want to point out, like, I'm not going to tie myself to pre-draft evaluations. Justin Herbert legitimately looks comfortable in the pocket, moving around, sensing pressure, having that it factor to extend plays, pushing the ball downfield with accuracy to create big plays on third down. That's the stuff that makes you a Super Bowl winning quarterback on a year-to-year basis. When you do that stuff consistently. And Herbert's showing it. So to this point, I think I'm mostly wrong on Justin Herbert. Now, I will say, in his first 3 starts, he has made 3 boneheaded interceptions. That was my number one criticism of Justin Herbert, was a lack of it factor, which, like I just said, he's showing it, but also kind of that lack of predictability outside of structure or when his team needs him the most. Like all that stuff. Like, do you trust Justin Herbert with the game on the line? And coming out of college, it was very much no. Like, I never felt comfortable with him in a close game because it felt like these boneheaded interceptions where it's just like he'll make 4 great plays in a row and then you see a throw and you're like, what are you doing? That's where some of the Trubisky comparisons came in. And I will say, in all 3 games, that throw has been there. It's only been one. Which is great compared to 2 or 3 like it was at Oregon. But is that gonna come down to 0 or 1 every few weeks, or is that gonna uptick to more like it was in college? So that's maybe the one concern. He's thrown 3 really bad interceptions that let's see, are they 0-3 with Herbert? They lost to the Chiefs, they lost to the Panthers, and they lost this week to the Bucs. All 3 of these picks came late in the game, all of them critical mistakes that allowed, not allowed, but gave a big swing towards the other team. So it's been mostly good, but those things were a concern coming out of Oregon. It's a small sample size, right? That's maybe the one criticism of Herbert right now, and they've been pretty bad picks, like throwing him up in a double coverage, throws that he should not be making. So for the most part, though, Herbert has looked better than I thought. Let's just leave it at that and continue to evaluate him as we go. And then for the Bucs, I do think the Bucs are just getting started here, and they need to get healthy. They lost O.J. Howard for the season, which really sucks, but they do still have Gronk. They have Brait. They're fine at that tight end spot. They got to get Godwin healthy. He's dealing with all kinds of stuff. Mike Evans, it feels like an injury waiting to happen. He's out there playing on a bad, banged up lower body. And they're playing on a short week this week, so they got to get out of this week healthy against the Bears, which will be a really good Thursday night game. But I do think the Bucs are just getting started. You watch the second half of that game, Tom Brady was excellent. He had an elite performance to come back and beat the Chargers this week against a really good defense. And I do think they're just getting started, the Bucs. Brady's getting used to this offense. This is a completely different offense than what he had in New England, right? Like he's pushing the ball downfield, and he's doing it well. He's doing it with accuracy, zip on the ball. He's moving around in the pocket a little bit. He's never going to be a scrambler, but he is extending plays in the pocket, and the offense is looking great. They're even running the ball pretty well. The offensive line is doing well. But what's really encouraging about the Bucs is they have a defense, and yeah, they gave up 30 points or whatever this week. But for the most part, like they have a good pass rush. Not an elite pass rush, but it's pretty good. They have the best linebacking core in the league, and they have a young secondary that I think is getting better every single week. So I think the Bucs are doing exactly what I thought they would. I thought they would start decent, but sloppy, and figure some things out as they go. I thought the defense was going to be a better second half unit than a first half because of how young that unit is, particularly in the secondary. Devin White in his second year as well. But the offense, I think it's there. They just got to get healthy. And the Bucs, to me, just might be, maybe not today, but the third most likely team in the NFC to win the Super Bowl, because I think that their trajectory looks really good. So we'll see what they do against the Bears. It's going to be a tough test. I don't think Godwin's going to play. Howard's out. Brady's going to be under a lot of pressure. Tristan Wirfs is going to be dealing with Khalil Mack this week. It's going to be an interesting matchup to watch there. But for the most part, the Bucs are trending upwards. Now we got the Browns-Cowboys game. I've been really hard on Dak. I'm just going to say this about the Cowboys. Everyone's got to be better. Everyone's got to be better. The offensive line needs to be better. They need to get healthy. I'm not going to say everyone. I would say the receivers are doing just fine. I think the defense clearly needs to be better. They need to tackle better. They need to figure out the secondary. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't think they will. I think that's going to be a problem. They're going to really probably need the pass rush. They need Lawrence and Aldon Smith to be consistently dominant for that secondary to even have a chance this year. The Cowboys feel like they're going to be giving up 25, 30 points per week. Now they're going to get Leighton Vander Esch back. That'll help with some of the tackling stuff, the communication stuff for sure. I don't know if Jalen Smith does the play calling on the defensive side of the ball or Leighton Vander Esch, but regardless, having that linebacker duo will help. But I really don't think Dak is free of blame like you're seeing on Twitter. If you watch Dak play, don't just look at the stats, because he threw for 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, technically no picks, though he had 3 or 4 balls in this game. 3 for sure. I didn't count them up, but I know there was another one that I thought maybe should have been picked. But 5 or 6 turnover-worthy plays in this game. He got strip sacked in the first half, just completely, poor clock. That's my criticism of Dak, right? He is very confident in what he sees before the snap. He's very confident in his receivers. He's going to step back. He's going to read the field. He's going to pick where he's going, and he's going to throw it. But that means he does not have a particularly good sense in the pocket. He doesn't really feel the pocket. He doesn't manipulate it in the right way. He doesn't sense pressure. He doesn't know when and how to scramble. He'll do it occasionally. He'll see it. He'll see his right tackle get beat right away, and he's got the athleticism to do it. But the rate at which he sees it is very low. And that showed up in the first half. And the other thing is, he does the Derek Carr thing way too much, where he'll throw short of the sticks on 3rd and 4th down. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, we gotta move the ball past the yard marker. It's just some small stuff that Dak's a really good quarterback. He's a really good quarterback. He's easily top 15 in that range. But here's the deal. Dak Prescott wants $40 million. People talk about him like a top 5 quarterback. He's the best receiving core in football. I don't think a lot of these sacks are necessarily in the offensive line. The linemen are getting beat, but they're plays where you will see even guys like Tom Brady. There's a play against the Chargers that I tweeted about. Brady against a 3-man rush steps up and away from his tackle that got beat. You go back to the Seahawks game, 3-man rush. Dak Prescott walks right into a sack. Sure, the left tackle got pushed back, but Prescott, instead of stepping up and away or spinning and rolling out like we see Rodgers, Mahomes, Wilson, Watson do all the time, and Dak has that athleticism. Instead of doing that, he's got his eyes downfield and he steps right into the sack. That's my problem with Dak Prescott. And those are nitpicky things, right? Well, if you're going to talk about Dak Prescott as a top 5 quarterback, he's got to do those things better. And obviously the defense sucked this week, right? Dak is not the reason they lost, but I'm going to be real, man. They had 14 points with 5 minutes left in the 3rd quarter. One of those touchdowns was a completely blown coverage by Cleveland, where Dak actually had all day to throw, saw it late, and threw it late and short over the middle of the field, but CeeDee Lamb was so wide open because Andrew Sendejo, who I don't know why he's on the field, completely blew his coverage. Other than that, I mean, Dak threw a nice touchdown on a slant that, again, Andrew Sendejo was late getting there, and Amari Cooper ended up shrugging off the tackle, kind of, in a tight window. It was a nice throw by Dak, but on 4th down, after he threw short of the sticks, actually checked into a screen on 3rd and 9. Other than those 2 plays, Dak was legitimately bad in this game up until effectively garbage time. He had a couple nice drives that was literally just all short of the sticks. Cleveland was dropping back, the Matt Ryan thing, right? And then he had one really nice drive that brought it within one score at the end. That was really the only time I was actually impressed amidst his 500 yards. Made some really nice throws downfield, which he's a top 15 quarterback. He's obviously capable of it. But he's not completely free of blame. This is not all the defense. There's a lot of short fields that are being given because of Dak Prescott, turnovers, and that's not mentioning that there was 3 or 4 balls in this game that should have been picked off. In fact, he had a dropped pick bounce off of the safety or the linebacker's hands and then landed in CeeDee Lamb's hands for a 15-yard gain. That's the second week in a row that's happened when the game should have been over on a pick, but it ricochets off the defense's hands and a receiver catches it. So there's some luck coming back the other way on Dak as well. But all in all, the Cowboys just need to be better. They play the Giants this week. They're going to be fine. I still think the Cowboys are the favorites to win this division. They have too much offensive firepower and, frankly, too much talent on defense to not at least regress back to the mean a little bit. And then for the Browns, they just continue to roll. The Browns look really good. One of the best offensive lines in football. They do lose Chubb here, but Kareem Hunt is going to be just fine until they can get Chubb back. I would give him plenty of time to recover. The run game will be just fine. And then Cleveland's defense is disoriented. They have a lot of holes, especially in the secondary. I would say the defensive line, other than Myles Garrett, is kind of a weakness. But Cleveland is a really good football team. I don't think they'll compete with Pittsburgh and Baltimore. But they probably will be a wild card team as long as they don't get off this track of running the ball, play action, using Odell to create big plays, having Jarvis as the underneath guy. They've got and Austin Hooper. They've got a good thing going, and I think they finally found a good head coach in Kevin Stefanski. Then we have the Cardinals-Panthers game. These are two young teams in. Cardinals are kind of a year ahead in their rebuild. But an interesting contrast here because you have the Panthers who have decided to build through offensive line play. They have a good offensive line. I think they made a good move to go get Russell Okung to secure the tackles there, who's playing pretty well. And then you have they drafted all defense, and they spent their first few picks on that defensive line with Derek Brown, Yetur Gross-Matos, Brian Burns last year. Whereas the Cardinals are building through skill players and secondary, right? So you have kind of the more classic approach from the Panthers versus this new ideology with the Cardinals, where they're like, we're going to trade for DeAndre Hopkins, we're going to draft Andy Isabella. We're going to draft Isaiah Simmons, this modern hybrid safety linebacker that still can't really, pick it up, by the way. And it showed this week. The Panthers dominated the trenches, mauled them with a better offensive line against a poor defensive line with Mike Davis, more time to throw, and they got after Kyler Murray. And they won the game because of it. As for the Cardinals, they continue to struggle to push the ball downfield. I would more so put this on the defense, a lack of physicality, a lack of tackling. They just got out-physicaled in this game, and I think they'll be just fine. I still think the Cardinals are about an 8-win team. That's where I projected them. Kyler wasn't amazing in this game. He seems to be losing a little bit of confidence because I think he wants to push the ball downfield. He's just getting frustrated because the play calling isn't allowing for it and the pass protection isn't allowing for it. So I don't know. The Cards still have a lot to figure out. I think they're still a year away. I'm still buying them long term, but they got to figure out some of the physicality aspects of this team that I said heading into the year we're going to hold them back, and we very much saw that this year. So I like the kind of yin and yang approach of these two teams. I'm not going to say either team is necessarily doing it right or wrong. I've actually applauded the way both these teams are building. It's just, there's many different ways to win in the NFL, right? I really like the Panthers' trajectory, though. Really impressed with Matt Rule doing the opposite of the Jets, right, where everyone is on the same page. Defensively, like, they are building something on that side of the ball. It's an extremely young defense. Gross Matos is playing really well as a raw second-round pick. I did think Matos should have been a first-rounder, and he looks like that, like a late first-round type of prospect. Burns is getting better. Derek Brown is turned it back around. They still got K1 Short. And then the secondary, you got some young pieces with Chin and Jackson, and Troy Pride is on the field. Eli Apple is still relatively young. Trey Boston, like they have some pieces there in the secondary. And Shaq Thompson's playing well at linebacker. So they're all kind of coming together on defense. I like their trajectory. I saw the new training facilities that they're trying to build. Absolutely built beautiful. I have just drooled over David Tepper's building of this organization. So very pro Panthers here on this channel. I'm excited for their long-term rebuild. I don't think Teddy is the long-term answer, but he's doing a good job kind of executing this short passing game. Then we have Jacksonville at Cincinnati. Joe Burrow's a top 10 quarterback. I said it last week. He was beautiful this week, just dominant. His decision-making is just so flawless. He's, you know, I've really talked about Burrow a lot. I'm not going to get into it too much here, but I will stand by that he is Tom Brady from the waist up and Aaron Rodgers from the waist down. He just has all the answers to the test. And this week, a lot of those answers was just dropping the ball off to Joe Mixon. And Joe Mixon was incredible this week, showing why he got that contract. I'm happy for him. He's been Burrow's Clyde Edwards-Helaire here, and he is their best offensive player, obviously outside of Burrow. So the Bengals offense is working. The defense is trying to figure some things out. The Bengals are a team that I think maybe next year you have some hype for them. But right now they're just one of the – I compared them to last year's Cardinals where they have the quarterback play. I genuinely believe that Joe Burrow is going to head into most games as the better quarterback in that matchup. He just doesn't necessarily have all the pieces around him. And then for the Jags were the Jags. The offense was fine. The defense was bad. They're a pretty predictable team right now. You kind of know what you're getting from them. Minshew was all right. He wasn't explosive, but he kept him in the game. So then we have the Saints-Lions game. The Lions, dude. The Lions are just a train wreck. Patricia, I think it's time to go. They're not physical. They got just physically beat down by the Saints. It was a complete mismatch. The Saints offensive line against Detroit. I think the Saints ran the ball like 40 times or something like that. And Breeze had all day to throw. Allowed Breeze to actually push the ball downfield a little bit. And Breeze was fine. Breeze kind of answered some questions this week, at least hitting that intermediate part of the field and some deeper throws as well. But man, the Lions in year 3 have a defensive head coach in Matt Patricia, and he is failing at his job. And I don't know, maybe you keep him around for the rest of the year, but I think the Lions need to kind of do a tear it down rebuild. I'm kind of in favor of that, and that might involve moving on from Stafford and just saying, you know what, we need an overhaul here. We need to redo this thing from the bottom up. And then for the Saints, like they continue to score a lot of points. They're not doing it like most teams. Like they're running the ball at a super high level. They have a great offensive line. Breeze isn't going to make mistakes, and they're just going to kind of, it's like a boxer. Like that's kind of what the Saints offense is, but it works. Like they have a great offensive line, which is going to pair well with Latavius Murray, who was actually awesome in this game, running between the tackles. And then you obviously mix in Kamara, who's kind of your explosive weapon. He's the guy that's going to catch, a screen, a toss, an angle route, anything, and turn it into 20-plus yards. I think they're going to get more 20-plus yard plays from Kamara this year than anyone else on the offense combined. They're fine. I would say if the Saints, with that style of offense, want to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender, I do think they need to figure out some things on defense. Because, again, this week they weren't particularly good. Stafford was fine. Galladay made some plays down the field. But that Detroit defense is just such a mess. And that's supposed to be what Patricia fixes here. Then we have Minnesota at Houston. Minnesota has found a formula here. And I talked about this last week about why you can't necessarily count them out. Really rough start. They weren't playing Justin Jefferson because he was getting used to the playbook in a COVID season. And that was a big piece for them, was they need the double action with Jefferson and Thielen to kind of replace what they had with Diggs, right? And they've found a winning formula here. The top 5 graded players for the Minnesota Vikings: Justin Jefferson, this is in order. Justin Jefferson, who has been just unbelievable. Not Jared Cook, Dalvin Cook, and Garrett Bradbury, their first-round pick center last year, who's a big part of the run game with this outside zone scheme. He's got to kind of set the tone in the middle of that front. And then Adam Thielen, who's still playing great, and Kirk Cousins, your quarterback. That's their formula, right? Run the ball, sideline action, play action, set up one-on-ones because they're afraid of the run game, and the play fakes on the horizontal action. Jefferson, Thielen, crossing routes, go balls, posts, getting one-on-one opportunities. Justin Jefferson creating explosive plays after the catch. Justin Jefferson is doing kind of like what A.J. Brown did for the Titans on the same scheme as a rookie last year. They're not giving him, crazy route combinations, but they're giving him big play opportunities, and he is just thriving with them. And Jefferson is proving that he's not just a slot guy. It was an interesting evaluation because he strictly played in the slot at LSU, but with his body type, he's big, fast, physical. There's no reason he shouldn't be able to step up and step outside at the next level. And ironically, A.J. Brown, very similar, played a lot of slot at Ole Miss, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, the Vikings have a winning formula on offense, and the defense is not good. Their secondary is terrible, especially in a game where Harrison Smith got ejected, which in my opinion was justified. Vikings fans were crying about it. You can't lead. You can't be out of position over the middle of the field and lead with your head from 3 yards away. I don't care what ends up happening. If you hit him, that's just a bad process of your tackle. It's just a dumb play by Harrison Smith. He's not a dirty player. It's just a dumb play. He should have been ejected for it. But when he gets ejected, Harrison Smith's been great this year. He's been easily their best defensive player other than Kendricks. They just don't have a pass rush. They don't have a secondary. Harris, the safety, Anthony Harris, got franchise tagged. He's been fine. He hasn't been the top 10 safety that he's been over the last year. But I do think over time, I do think that they'll figure some things out in the secondary with Zimmer, who's a great defensive coach, and getting Danielle Hunter back at some point, hopefully. Like I said before the year, it's a weird injury. There's no signs of him coming back anytime soon, and if he can't be back, I think the Vikings are toast. But if he comes back and they can at least get this defense back towards top 20, they'll be a pretty good football team. And then for Houston, it was definitely due to get rid of Bill O'Brien. We'll see what happens with the future here. Houston's got to do a real good hiring in the front office, and I think what they need to do is take a step back. People are saying trade Deshaun Watson. You don't trade Deshaun Watson. That's your big selling piece. You don't have a first-round pick. You don't have a second-round pick. Your selling point is we have Deshaun Watson and we have a left tackle. And that's really it. I do think they should consider trading J.J. Watt, honestly. I know his contract is nearing an end. I think that could be a beneficial thing for them. I think there's a team that wants to win this year that might give up a second-round pick for J.J. Watt. And I think that might be the right decision. He's been injury-prone. You're not winning anything this year. I don't think there's a long-term future for J.J. Watt in Houston. So I do think that could be something they think about. But for the most part, Houston needs to take a look at this like Seattle did when they lost Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill. When all those guys, the Legion of Boom, fell apart, Seattle took a step back. They said, we're still going to compete because we have a good coach. Houston needs to hire a good coach. And they need to say, we're probably going to struggle, especially on defense for a little while, but we're going to make the most of our resources. We're going to trade down. We're going to get a lot of picks. We're going to build a culture back up. And then you can get a little more aggressive down the road with a Jamal Adams per se. But that to me is what Houston needs to do. They would be making a big mistake if they said, we're going to try to win next year and go and hire some win now coach like, say, Josh McDaniels. I think you go the younger coach route and try to build up something special. We'll see what they do. It's an interesting thing because not a lot of teams have a top 5 quarterback like Deshaun Watson to sell to a coach. And that's when you have that player, it's not necessarily a problem that you don't have a first and second round pick this year. Then we have Seattle at Miami. Seattle's fine. I moved them down in the power rankings behind Green Bay this week because I think line play on both sides of the ball is a problem for them. They don't have much of a pass rush. They don't have much of an offensive line. It's really just Russell Wilson running around, making crazy throws. He's going to do it every week. He did it again this week. He wasn't there in the first half, some drop balls. But the offense is going to be just fine. But I am worried about Seattle's defense. I really am. They don't have a pass rush. Without Jamal Adams out there, the secondary just it's not all that good. The linebackers are great. I mean, KJ Wright is just an Iron Man. He's playing outstanding this season. But Seattle's just fine. I still think they're a top 3 or 4 football team in the league. And then for Miami, someone was asking me, what is the Miami Dolphins' problem this year? And I think it was implied that it's not talent, and I do think it's talent. The offensive line is still one of the worst in the league. Probably not as bad as Cincinnati, but it's right there. Offensively, what do you really have? I mean, you got Devontae Parker, and Mike Gesicki's an explosive, interesting player that if schemed up correctly can be a piece for the future. But other than that, you don't really have much on offense. It's really just Ryan Fitzpatrick being aggressive. He's going to make some mistakes, pushing the ball downfield. I did not like the Dolphins draft. I really did not. And who for Miami is really stepping up among the guys that they drafted? Like the offensive linemen, they've been fine, but they haven't been good. They've been better than what they had last year. It would have been impossible not to be. But Austin Jackson looks like the project that he was supposed to be coming out. Robert Hunt is playing guard. Solomon Kinley's maybe been their best guard. He was a 4th-round pick. I thought he was the best value they had in the whole draft. And then defensively, I'm trying to think. So Tua hasn't contributed yet. That's fine. And then Noah Igbenogany's been getting whooped out there. He looks like he's not ready. They took like Brandon Jones in the 4th round. I don't know why they did that. He's just worse Eric Rowe. He's not really playing. I did not like the Dolphins draft, and it's not showing up. In a year that you wanted these young players to show up and contribute, that's not what's happening. The free agent signings have been okay. Van Noy and the guy from Buffalo, Lawson, Byron Jones. Like the free agent signings were fine, but they did not, I think, draft particularly well. We'll see what Tua ends up being, but I don't know, man. I think Miami has a serious lack of talent. The safeties are not good. And that showed this week. I just think Miami is a long way to go, and I'm not really buying into Miami. A lot of people are. I don't think Tua is the type of quarterback that's when they do play him that he's going to elevate all these players. And the one player that he might elevate would be Gesicki because Tua's really good over the middle of the field, so that could be a pretty special combination. But I don't really buy into the defense from a talent perspective. I think their coaching is just fine. They played tough in this game, but I think they just have a long way to go. And I thought that draft, they loaded up on so many picks, and I did not think that they made the most of those draft picks. And maybe it proves wrong. You know, maybe Jackson at left tackle turns into a superstar. Maybe Igbenogany, I'm sure he will at some point turn this thing around and be a stud at corner. But they had so many picks, and I don't know if they made the most of them. I really don't. And it's not just the first round; it's the second round. We'll see. It's a long game for the Dolphins here. Then we have Baltimore at Washington. So Dwayne Haskins gets benched. It honestly, it's surprising but not surprising. Like he hasn't been good. He doesn't have a lot of help, but he hasn't been good at all. The Washington offense is painful to watch. I was sitting there watching the game in bed, literally like this, like, oh my God, this is so boring. Run. Okay, 3rd and 6, Dwayne Haskins drops back. Okay, pressured. Oh, he overthrew the crossing route. Oh, he took the check down. They're going to punt. And then they get behind, a bunch of points, and he starts to push the ball downfield a little bit, and it's not particularly pretty. I just don't see it from Haskins. He was this kind of pocket player at Ohio State. He obviously needed better offensive line, better playmakers in front of him, a better scheme. He obviously needed that coming into the league, and the Washington team haven't given him that. But he's just not creating. And with all of these options out there at quarterback, we've talked about the depth at quarterback around the league. I don't even know if he's really worth acquiring. I really don't. I mean, maybe if you're the Bears, where like it can't get much worse. But I just, like, if I'm like the Patriots or the Steelers, I don't think Dwayne Haskins is the guy that I'm going for. I mean, he's a smart quarterback, but he hasn't been very accurate. He doesn't create. I don't think he's like an elite mind. He's pretty smart, but I don't know, man. I think that might be it for Haskins. I'm sure he'll get starts. He'll get spot starts, but he might just be a backup, a really good backup. Like, that might be who he is. Like, he might be this sort of, system backup. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is the only one that comes to mind. Maybe like Mariota, Derek Carr, kind of, who I think should be a system backup. We'll get into Carr in a little bit. Ravens were the Ravens. Lamar Jackson had a press conference, basically perfectly summarized my thoughts on the Ravens, that they're leaving some points on the table. These are Lamar Jackson's words. They haven't been the efficient, explosive offense that they were. I think teams, as we sort of expected, have caught on to the read option stuff. They're having to mix their offense up a little bit, pass the ball a little more, and it hasn't been there. That's not what this offense was built to do. The pass protection on the interior is terrible. They don't have great playmakers downfield, and I don't think Lamar Jackson is an elite pocket passing quarterback. He's a good passer, but they're figuring some things out. I think they'll be just fine. I don't think they'll be as explosive as they were last year. But the defense is playing better this year, so some pros and cons there. Then we have the Giants and the Rams. This was an ugly game. I thought the Rams were just kind of coasting here. That Rams pass rush was just such a mismatch for the Giants. Really, the only good thing the Giants have going for them is their guards, right? And no guard is going to match up well against Aaron Donald. So they eliminated what the Giants do have on the front, and then everyone else was just dominating what they had. I mean, Jones, I wasn't even that, I'm not a Daniel Jones guy, but I wasn't even like that underwhelmed by him. He had no chance. He was just running for his life. They don't have the playmakers on this offense vertically. I actually didn't think the Giants were that bad this week. I'm not going to constantly shred the Giants just because. I thought they were tackling much better. The defense was good. As much as I hate to admit it, Blake Martinez has been pretty good for them. And I don't know how to explain it. I mean, I'm not going to apologize. He was one of the worst players in the NFL for the Green Bay Packers for 3 years. Complete liability in coverage, and was not being aggressive as a tackler. And I don't know if it's just a change of scenery, different coaching. Very well could be. I mean, the Packers don't necessarily have the best linebacking track record of developing guys. But Martinez, he does look better. There was still a play where he, in typical Blake Martinez fashion, dropped into his zone, and Cooper Kupp slipped right behind him. I think it was cover 2. And Martinez just assumed that someone was going to pick him up. The best linebackers, as I say, they cover players, not grass. After a certain point, you got to flip your head around and cover a guy. And Martinez just let Coop go right over his head. It was a 60-yard touchdown. Game over. But for the most part, Martinez has been better. Daniel Jones, he wasn't terrible. I literally just kept thinking, this is Kirk Cousins. That's really what he is. I think he can be a fine quarterback. I would never, especially when I'm not any good, like the Giants, I would never settle for Kirk Cousins as my quarterback. If I'm going to have the number 1 pick, I'm taking Trevor Lawrence. And maybe they get something for Daniel Jones, maybe they don't. I did my own fact-checking. I thought that he had a turnover every week. I saw someone tweet that there has been one game that he did not turn the ball over, but regardless, whether it's 0 or 1 starts in his career, that he has turned the ball over, or 0 to 1 starts in his career that he has not turned the ball over. That's not good, obviously. He's got fumbling problems. He doesn't have a great pocket sense. He will make bad passing decisions. He's not what I would want as an NFL starter. He's a 15 to 24 starter any given week. Very rarely is going to be anything more than that. And I don't want to settle for that. I really don't. But he wasn't particularly bad in this game. He did what he could. They were just outmatched. The one note on the Rams, who they didn't have the best day offensively. The defense had a great day. Pass rush looked great. The coverage was good. Darius Williams is a corner. He's 5'9". Reminds me a lot of Casey Hayward. And the Rams scheme is not that unlike what the Chargers run, with a lot of zone. And and man coverage too, but Darius Williams has been just a ball hawk, and he's doing what Casey Hayward is so good at. There was those years where Casey Hayward was getting 5 or 6 picks every year, it felt like. He baits dudes. He knows he has confidence in his short area quickness, and he'll kind of slow down and act like he got beat and bait dudes and make a play, and it's a really special trait. So this is a 5'9" corner, believe an undrafted free agent out of UAB, who is really emerging as I don't want to say premier outside corner, but a playmaking outside corner to say the least. He's been really good. He made that game-winning interception at the end. All right, Colts at Bears. This game was pretty simple. Indy had a very conservative game plan. 4-man rushes, 2 high safety all day long, basically knowing, and I said this was going to be an interesting game because Frank Reich knows Nick Foles, right? They were together in Philadelphia when they won the Super Bowl, and I think Frank Reich knows everything about Nick Foles. And I think what he did is he went to Eberflus and said, if we just make Nick Foles beat us, we're going to win this game. And that's what they did. They had a 4-man rush all day long. And it was fairly effective. Not dominant, but fairly effective. And they just said, we got great linebackers. We're going to fly to the ball. We got Julian Blackmon and Kari Willis as really good downhill safeties. Julian Blackman's been incredible. I think there's a good chance he's going to be a better player for them than Malik Hooker. I really do. But they went too high almost all game. Cover 2, cover 4, disguise, not even a whole lot of disguise. Just pretty basic, right? Cover 2, cover 4. And they just said, we're going to make Nick Foles take what's underneath, and we know that if he is going to float these balls downfield, we're going to make plays on him. And it worked. They just dominated Nick Foles. That's basically what they did. The Bears can't run the ball very well right now. Indy's defense is really solid. I don't know if they have either the personnel or scheme to be an elite defense, but they're like a really consistent, steady defense that just kind of keeps everything in front of them and forces you to play perfectly. And like we saw week 1, like Gardner Minshew played mentally perfectly, and he was able to beat this defense, right? Well, Nick Foles isn't capable of doing that. He just isn't going to take the appropriate risks. He's not going to process everything at that high level. There's a reason Gardner Minshew beat out Nick Foles, right? So I like their defense. And then offensively, like, they're running the ball well. As long as Rivers isn't making mistakes, which he hasn't for the last 2 weeks, I think he's been doing a great job of saying, doing a mental reset. The first couple weeks he was doing what he was doing in Indianapolis, in LA, just trying to do too much. And they've done a great job of saying, Philip, dude, relax. You got a great offensive line in front of you. We got good playmakers. We have a really good running game. Just take what's there. Don't do too much. And he's doing that. I don't even think he threw for 200 yards this week. But he's getting on a good chemistry with O'Reilly Cox. That's their formula. Run the ball, 20, 25 points a game. Don't turn the ball over, Phillip. And keep everything in front of you for the defense. Make plays when you can. Get after the passer. Keep everything in front of you. That's their game plan. They're a really steady football team. And you got to play close to perfect to beat them. You got to really play well. Bears are just so stagnant on offense. The defense is good. They have a really good defense. But when your offense just can't create plays, it's just tough. I think they're going to lose to the Bucs on Thursday. It comes down to health for the Bucs, though. I could see that being a defensive slugfest and them kind of getting the best of Tom Brady, but I don't know. It's going to be a tough game. I'm not going to make any statements on that right here. The picks for that game will be on Patreon tomorrow. Bills at Raiders. This is a fun game from the Bills' perspective. They're making plays on defense, creating a lot of turnovers. Josh Allen is just so fun to watch. I mean, he plays so much like Patrick Mahomes. He really does. He just moves around the pocket. That was always a thing I liked about Josh Allen, was he has that legitimate pocket presence, knowing when and how to sense pressure, knows when to scramble, knows when to roll out, keep his eyes downfield. he's got a great feel for that. And now that the accuracy is there and the offensive line is buying him time to play in rhythm, and he's got receivers getting open, it's all coming together for Josh Allen. It's just beautiful. And he's playing great. I mean, the fact that his accuracy is not regressed back to what he's been is so encouraging. So the game's slowing down for him. He's throwing the ball well. The Bills' offense is so legit. The Bills just have, I haven't quite jumped on the wagon yet. I've been a little back and forth here. Bills fans think I hate them. I don't hate the Bills. They got to play Tennessee if that game happens, and they got to play Kansas City. Those are going to be true tests. If they can, not even necessarily beat Kansas City, but if they can go punch for punch, I don't think that the Bills' defense will do particularly well against Kansas City, but I just don't think they have the speed in the secondary. But if they can go punch for punch and lose like 34-30, I think the Bills are a very legitimate team. So we'll see what they look like over the next 2 weeks before I kind of cluster them into this Super Bowl contending team. I'm not quite there yet. I still think they have some inconsistencies, especially potentially on the horizons based on like their history. Bills fans don't want to hear that. I'm not going to go too far into it, but you do need to look at historical data as well. You put more emphasis on the most recent stuff, but that's all I'm going to say. I think the Bills are great. As for the Raiders, this is the most boring, monotonous offense. Like, what a contrast to go from, you get to watch Josh Allen making big plays, extending plays, exciting stuff, the arm talent, the athleticism, Stephon Diggs mossing dudes, Cole Beasley mossing dudes, pushing the ball downfield. And then you go to the Raiders, who, like, it's a good, effective, efficient offense. They're consistent. I get it. But my God, is it so boring and monotonous. It's the same thing every single drive. It's Derek Carr doing the exaggerated version of the stuff I've said about Dak Prescott. First read, boom, 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 check down, check down. The only times he scrambles is when there's pressure right in his face and he has to do something. And even then, he's not even very good out of structure. It's so boring, dude. They're never going to win with Derek Carr. Unless their defense goes from what they are right now, which is not worst in the league, because there's some really bad defenses, but it's bottom 3, bottom 5. Unless it goes from that to top 5 and does a complete overhaul, which is not going to happen. They just don't have the personnel for it on any level of the defense. They're never going to win a Super Bowl with this unit. Derek Carr is not explosive enough. And I get it. Like, Henry Ruggs is out. I don't think that's going to change a whole lot. Derek Carr is who he is. And Marcus Mariota is the same thing. Same thing. That's not going to be an answer either. So I don't know what you do if you're the Raiders. You're not going to really have a great option at quarterback. I think they're stuck. They are really stuck. And it's unfortunate. But they could be a good team. They could win 8-10 games if a few things go correctly. But they will never compete for a Super Bowl. Ever. With the way that they are structured right now. It needs a complete overhaul. Whether you have Derek Carr and your defense becomes elite, which they don't have a single star on that defense. Like, really. They don't have, not let alone superstar. You just have a bunch of average starters that don't make plays on the defense. That's not gonna cut it. You need at least 4 stars, let alone 2 superstars, in addition to 4 stars, and a balanced unit throughout that to have a top 5 defense. And they just aren't gonna do that. Yeah, let's move on. Eagles, San Francisco. I think the Niners will be just fine. I ranked them 7th in my power rankings. I think the Eagles will be just fine. I'm not panicking. The Niners. Like I've said, not having Nick Bosa decreases the ceiling of their defense, but they're still a really good defense. They're really well coached. They fly around the field. They tackle well. They have a good enough pass rush. It's not great. But you still have Armstead, Ford. You've got Kinlaw in the middle there. Still get after the passer. Good coverage team. And then offensively, they will be just fine. Just fine. Nick Mullins was a train wreck. He's gone. You're not going to have that again. At worst, you go with Beathard and will be better. But I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be back this week. And not only that, but they get Kittle back healthy. I mean, my God, is Kittle not a top 3 problem in the NFL non-quarterback? You get him. You get Debo played in spurts this week. They're kind of rotating back in. And Ayuk looks like a good pick in the first round who Shanahan's going to get going. I mean, this offense could be better than it was last year. And Jerick McKinnon looks like a complete back. Jerick McKinnon looks incredible. He looks, I mean, Mostert's going to have more big plays, and they'll still use Mostert, but McKinnon has better vision. He's more smooth as a receiver. He breaks more tackles in the run game. I mean, they are going to be an elite offense once they get all these guys healthy, and they're right around the corner of that, right? People are like, oh, they're 2-2. They haven't beaten anyone. Well, yeah, they've been completely depleted by injuries. But those guys, it's not like it's a long way down the road, right? Like Jimmy Garoppolo is right on the fringe of playing. Kittle's back now. Debo's back now, although had a limited snap count last week. Ayuk missed the first 3 weeks of the season, or at least the first 2 weeks. He's back and healthy. Like, they're back. They're good to go. I think they're going to hit the ground running from this point on. As for the Eagles, let's talk about Carson Wentz. I just want to read the players he had out there. So the offensive line is decimated. They have Kelsey at center. Great. They had Jordan Mailata, who I think was playing rugby 2 years ago, at left tackle. They have the 2 guards are, I know one of them is Herbert, who was good the first few weeks but got just obliterated this week. I think Matt Pryor is the other guard right now, who is an unproven young player. And then you have your center in Kelsey. And then at tackle, Lane Johnson was out for most of this game. And they had to put in Jack Driscoll, who's a rookie. And not only that, but these are his receivers. So he does have Zach Ertz, who, by the way, is having the worst year of his career by far. But you have Zach Ertz. Great. You got a tight end. Good for you. Richard Rodgers was his best receiver in this game. And then his receivers were Travis Fulgham, Greg Ward, John Hightower, and Deontay Barnett. And Boston Scott and Adrian Killens at running back got significant reps. He was working with a practice squad. And he was working with Zach Ertz. He basically held hands with Zach Ertz and Travis Kelce. Jason Kelce. Held hands, walked out of the tunnel, and behind him was 30 practice squad players and rookies rolling out behind him. And they said, primetime football, let's go up against the defending NFC champs. And they got the job done. Wentz was not perfect in this game. Don't get me wrong. But here's the difference for me between Wentz and Carson Wentz. Wentz and Dak Prescott, because this is a big debate, right? And I think they're actually close in terms of rankings. I think when I did my tier list, I had Wentz 1 spot above Dak Prescott. But here's what it comes down to me. I've seen Wentz, when he has help around him, which was 2 years ago, play in rhythm, play at an MVP level. When he's got pass protection and when he's got players to throw the ball to, he can do that. He's not great at it. Don't get me wrong. Like, Dak Prescott is a better in-rhythm player. He's a better system player than Wentz. But when it's 3rd and 10, who do you want to be your quarterback? Are you really taking Dak Prescott, who's probably just going to throw the ball 8 yards short of the line of scrimmage or not feel his tackle get beat and get sacked? Like, in a vacuum, if it's a must-win game, if it's Sunday Night Football, my team has not won a game yet, and we are injured to all hell, and I need a quarterback that can come out and make enough plays to win this game for me, I am taking Carson Wentz every single day of the week. Now, sure, if I've got the best receiving core in the NFL, and I don't need to ask that much of my quarterback, I just need you to drop back and put the ball and make quick decisions, sure, I'll take Dak Prescott. But that's a pretty extenuating circumstance. Wentz, to me, is the guy that shows up with his back against the wall, constantly proves people wrong, wins big games. So, I mean, that's the Wentz spiel. He's not perfect. He needs to play better in rhythm. He doesn't feel blitzes very well. He's not been very accurate this year. That's something that I do expect to regress back to the mean. He's never been an elite accurate quarterback, but he's been accurate enough. The ball that he threw to something called Travis Fulgham, who couldn't make the Packers, was not open, right? He's got a defender dragging all over him. And Carson Wentz, in a must-have moment, they're trailing. He lands it right in Fulgham's breadbasket. That's not the type of accuracy you see from Dak Prescott either. Dak Prescott has door frame accuracy, right? There's a saying in football, some quarterbacks hit the door, some quarterbacks hit the doorknob, some quarterbacks hit the keyhole. Well, Dak Prescott's got door frame accuracy, right? It shows up, the spreadsheets, looks great, it's an accurate throw. His completion percentage is nice. Well, yeah, he's throwing it in the door frame to Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb. Like, yeah, they're going to make plays. It's the best receiving group in the league. If that ball is 2 feet over here or high or anything, Travis Fulgham is not making that play. CeeDee Lamb might. Amari Cooper might. Michael Gallup might. We've seen it time and time again. Travis Fulgham ain't doing nothing other than putting his hands out. That ball has to be right there, and it was. Tight coverage, too. Right on him. Not like the type of stuff you see Dak doing with CeeDee Lamb with no one within 10 yards of him running a crossing route, or Amari Cooper, with 5 yards ahead of the guy that was trying to press him one-on-one on the sideline. Not the same. So that's my spiel there. Like I said, I think they're close. Wentz has not been good this year, but he did some amazing stuff to come out with that win against a much better team in the Niners. Other than the Nick Mullins mistakes obviously helped give Wentz those opportunities, but what he did with those opportunities is what's impressive. That's the difference to me. There's always an excuse for Dak Prescott, right? It's his offensive line's hurt. I just read the Eagles' offensive line for you. It's his defense. His defense sucked. Well, what about when the defense held the Saints to 13 points and Dak completely shit the bed against the Saints last year? What was the excuse there? Is drops. Okay, for every drop that the Cowboys had, it was an amazing play by the receivers last year. The excuses just keep coming for Dak. Whereas Wentz, I feel like doesn't get the same end of that. And I think it's because Wentz was the top pick. He's the golden boy. Was this guy that should have won MVP, all this stuff. Whereas Dak's he's proved guys wrong. He's a 5th round pick, all that stuff. He's been much better than people expected, but I think he's reached a cutoff point, and Wentz is kind of backing up on that cutoff point because he's having a bad year. I don't know. We don't need to go any further into that. New England at Kansas City. This was an unbelievable effort by the Patriots defense. Belichick is just such a weapon for the Patriots. The way they use the secondary is so impressive. J.C. Jackson, the McCourties, you got Gilmore, Jonathan Jones, even the safety hybrid guys, specifically number 25, the Texas guy, Adrian Phillips. They move these guys around, they match them up, they double. They'll run zone when they need to, they'll run man when they need to. Belichick just has all of the answers. And they got the best of Mahomes. I mean, Mahomes did what he needed to do. I mean, Mahomes' performance against the Patriots wasn't completely unlike Wentz's performance. Obviously, there's difference as far as the surrounding unit, but they made some bad mistakes, they had some turnover-worthy plays. But when they needed to move the chains, he would move around, he would make a big throw, he would scramble. He did enough to win the game. I think you walk away more impressed by the Patriots than anything. I mean, Hoyer he got benched for a reason. He was terrible. If they started Stidham, I'm not sure the Patriots actually lose that game, let alone Cam Newton. So, a weird game where the Patriots came out with a great defensive game plan. Now it's, game flow is a real thing. It's hard to say that the defense would have played that well with Cam Newton in there. Sometimes when your offense is scoring, the defense isn't quite as tight. We'll wrap this thing up as the water's starting there. But as for Kansas City's side, they just keep on rolling. They are just I keep saying this, but they have all of the answers. The Chiefs do. Whether you need Mahomes to make a play on third down because the offense is struggling, whether they need to run the ball to win the game, or even defensively, like they do enough on defense. They got Willie Gay going this week, which would be big for that linebacking group. We got one more game here. Atlanta at Green Bay. Let's start with the Packers side of the ball. I'm just gonna have a quick sip here. So I tweeted about this, but Aaron Rodgers is just excuse me, playing on rookie mode right now. Seeing the field, I think, better than he ever has in his entire career. Really impressive stuff, and he's doing it in different ways. He's taking the easy stuff underneath. Like, he's playing in rhythm, which has been the big criticism of Rodgers, right? Is he'll pass up easy stuff and try to do too much. And in year 2 of this offense, you can tell, like, he knows where the checkdown's going to be. He knows where the easier reads are going to be. And it's the offense is playing in such harmony right now. And when that's the case, it doesn't matter who's out there at wide receiver. They used Jamal Williams at wide receiver. Aaron Jones, we know, can play wide receiver. Robert Tonyan is emerging as a weapon on tight end. I think the most credit you got to give here is to Rodgers, obviously, with the chip on his shoulder, with them taking Jordan Love. Like, he is refocused. Matt LaFleur is really a special coordinator, I think. I've said this before, but he's put his own spin on this thing, right? The core concepts of the outside zone play action stuff, it's all there. But he's put his own spin on this stuff, too. He's doing stuff that San Francisco can't do, that Tennessee can't do, that Minnesota can't do, with more traditional passing concepts, because he does have Aaron Rodgers. On 3rd and 8, you might see Shanahan draw up a interesting trap call or a screen play. You might see Minnesota call a draw. You might see Tennessee get cute. The Packers can go to more traditional stuff because they know they have Aaron Rodgers. And that's what's really lethal, is you have the easy stuff there from great play calling, really good blocking. The easy stuff is there, and they're scheming it up, and Rodgers is all about it. He is like, if I don't have to do much, that's fine by me. If all I got to do is hit the running back in the flat this week and hand the ball to Aaron Jones and throw a couple balls over the middle of the field, which he hasn't done throughout his career very well. He's using the middle of the field now because he realizes that's a great weapon for him. He's like, if I can play in structure, I'm gonna do it. Like, I know that, like, I'm mentally ahead of everyone in the league right now outside of maybe Drew Brees. I mean, Tom Brady will get there, but he's in a new scheme. He's dealing with what Rodgers had to last year with a new scheme. So Rodgers just seeing the field so well. He's on absolute rookie mode. And they're going to get Devontae Adams back. Allen Lazard was not playing in this game. I don't know when he's going to come back. I think he'll be back come playoff time at least. He's got a core injury, which sounds super painful. And then you have defensively. So this is a big reason I felt okay moving the Packers over the Seahawks, because offensively they're very different. They both have extremely good offenses, but where the Packers differ is defense. They actually have a pass rush, unlike the Seahawks. People don't remember it, but the Packers actually had the best pass rush in the NFL last year, and they were good this week. But they haven't had Kenny Clark, who is a big part of that pass rush. I don't think people realize how big of a deal Kenny Clark being out has been. With the blitz packages they run, they are so dependent on Kenny Clark demanding that double team, because that opens up Zadarius Smith, which opens up Preston Smith, and then even Rashawn Gary, who missed this game, has been really good. Kenny Clark will be back after the bye week. 2 of the 5 best players in the Packers have been out for the majority of the season. Kenny Clark and Devontae Adams have missed the majority of the season at this point, which is crazy to think about. So the Packers have a pass rush, and I don't know if he'll keep it up, but Jair Alexander has been undisputedly the best corner in the NFL. You can't throw at the guy right now. You just can't. He's all over at the catch point. He sticks to guys like glue. He's smart in zone coverage. He tackles well. He's one of the best athletes at the position. He's physical. He's scrappy. He talks trash. I mean, he is the perfect corner. You can do anything with him. He is outplaying Stephon Gilmore. I think he's outplaying Jalen Ramsey. I mean, you have quite possibly a top 3 pass rush once everything gets healthy there. That's what they were last year. And a secondary that's got the best corner in football, a good safety duo with Savage and Amos, who are fine. Kevin King's been okay as a number 2 corner. And then you have Shannon Sullivan's, who's been good in the slot. You have Raven Green, who stepped up. I feel like it just got way darker in here. I don't know what that's all about. But the Packers' defense is legit. And, Blake Martinez has been fine for the Giants, but the guys that they have there with Chris Bynes, Ty Summers, they've been better at linebacker than Martinez has been for them. So that defense is coming together too. I think the Packers are closing on the Chiefs. I really do. Oh, now it's first Wednesday of the month. We got the sirens going off. It's just so many noises right now. I think I'm going to skip the mailbag because I feel like it's just, we got the shower going, we got the fire alarms going. The last thing I will say here is Matt Ryan was terrible in this game. He has not been that great this year, especially the last 2 weeks. And what do you do with him? What do you do with him? What do you do with Julio Jones? Do you start a rebuild there? I think that might be the right decision. It's a tough decision, but if you're going to go with a new coach, what is a 36-year-old quarterback and who's not Tom Brady, he's not Aaron Rodgers, he's not some transcendent talent. What do you do with Matt Ryan, with a 32-year-old Julio Jones who has spent the last 3 years in and out of the lineup every week? I think they might be best to do a full rebuild here. Atlanta and Detroit in the NFC. And could we see Matt Stafford and Matt Ryan on different teams in the future? All right, so I obviously had to let those sirens finish before we get out of here. I am going to do the Patreon mailbag. Closed off the camera, though, for this last portion. So, starting with the Patreon mailbag. Again, guys, if you want to support the show and get exclusive access to the mailbag, you can do it on Patreon. It's patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. Just $1 a month will guarantee I get to your Patreon mailbag questions on the show. All right. From Connor Lee, can you quickly run through Dallas and Philly's schedules and say their W's and L's for a quick reprediction of their records? Okay, we can do that. Just don't mind the clicky-clacky of the keyboard here while I do that. Let's do Eagles first. So I'm just going to tally wins. So the Eagles' schedule, they have 1 win and a tie. So they are at Pittsburgh, I would say loss. Baltimore, loss. Then they get Giants, that's a win. I do think they split with Dallas. I think they find a way to win one and then get blown out in another game. So I don't know if they'll do that at Dallas or on the road at Dallas, but I think they'll get those 2 against the Giants. They'll get the 1 against Dallas. So it's 3 wins. At Cleveland and then Seattle at home and then at Green Bay and then New Orleans at home. So 4 really tough games there. I would guess they get 1 of those 3. Maybe they split, but I'm going to say they get 1 of those 3. Those are really tough games. So that's 4 wins. 4 more wins. Then they have at Arizona, at Dallas, and Washington. So we said they're going to split against Dallas. We already accounted for that. And then I think they will beat Washington. And then at Arizona, you know what? Because we only gave them 1 of the 4 in that tough stretch, I will give them the Arizona game and say they get 6 wins. So they get to 7 wins and a tie on their season. And then let's do Dallas, who has just 1 win right now. This is interesting. I haven't thought to do this yet, so that's a good question. So Dallas Cowboys schedule. So they have 1 win. So we have them splitting with Philly, which I think is fair. So we'll account for that 1 win. And then they have Giants this week. I think they win that. They have Arizona. I think they could beat Arizona. That's 3. We said the Eagles would beat Arizona. Then they have at Washington. That's 4 already. At Philly, loss. Pittsburgh, loss. At Minnesota, I would say 5. They get to play Washington, so that's 6. At Baltimore, loss. At Cincinnati, I'd say 7. San Francisco, Philly, and Giants. So yeah, I think Dallas has got to be the clear front runner right now. Their schedule's a lot easier, so I think they'll get to 8 or 9 wins and win the division. But they gotta start playing some defense. But if you're a Cowboys fan, you're not in panic mode yet. That's for sure. From Nick, where would you put Kaepernick on my QB rankings list from last week? He'd be in the 40s. He'd be in that backup tier. You know, he'd be a high-quality backup. He'd be there with, like, Case Keenum and those guys. From Tyler, and not all these will be questions, so just bear with me if I gloss over something. But this is from Tyler. He's a new patron. Thanks for signing up, Tyler. I appreciate you. He's got 2 questions. While getting a young future QB will most likely be the most important step of a rebuild, has popular theory been wrong when saying it should be the first step? With the failures of Darnold, Rosen, Haskins due to a lack of immediate help on the roster, should we start to see the QB find as the second step in a rebuild after you've built around it? Yeah, I think that's the way to do it, honestly. I mean, there's certain prospects, and to be fair, I thought Darnold was going to be one of those guys. But in Rosen and Haskins' case, especially given their play styles, they're more system guys, right? They don't create a whole lot out of structure. You definitely want to have something in place for guys like Rosen and Haskins. As for Darnold, guys like Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, these are guys that weren't good coming in, but over a couple years, first 2, I would say year 2 is really important to start putting talent around guys. I think you can still draft a guy and protect him. I think that's kind of what Miami is thinking right now. There's a lot of ways to do it, but at the end of the day, you absolutely need to get help for your quarterback fast. I think the Jets are showing what not to do. You don't draft a guy and then go 3 years and just not give him any help at all. But yeah, good question. And then you said, with multiple opt-outs from elite run-defending D tackles, why is Snacks Harrison unemployed? Well, Harrison's he's getting up there in age. He hasn't been super effective. I think Seattle's going to sign him this week, or Green Bay. But I haven't looked too far into that. Marcel Darius is also unsigned right now. It's not a super needy position, and it's not like Snacks has been what he used to be, but I think he'll get back on the field at some point this year. That one wasn't a question. You need opinion on flex options this week. I think this is a delayed question. Yeah, sorry. You got to ask before I get to these on Wednesday, Jesse. Sorry, I didn't get back to you in time on that one. What is one word you'd use to describe each and every fan base in the league? That's a little too time consuming, and I certainly can't answer that on the fly, but maybe that's a video concept or something from Loomer Cooper. From SFT Yannick, you wanted to thank for my great gambling advice this week. Thank you. You made an undisclosed amount of money here from your picks. Also, I'm your go-to channel for NFL stuff. I can't wait for draft season. Keep it up. All right, that's not a question, but I really appreciate it. SFT Yannick, shout out to you. Thanks for your patronage, brother. All right, this is a question about my spreadsheet for TFG ratings. The PS4 team has a spreadsheet, I believe. This guy wants to help out with the PC roster. I'll get back to you, Nick. All right, let's see if we got some mailbag questions here. Yeah, this is a question about the Texans trading away players, such as J.J. Watt from Josh Alstrom. I would say, yeah, I think the Texans should trade away players. I would trade away J.J. Watt. I would see if there's a market for Stills, maybe even Brandon Cooks, considering you're not attached to that trade anymore. Hell, I would even consider Will Fuller, who seems to be banged up all the time. Defensively, I'd try to keep the young players you have. Definitely not trading Reed. I wouldn't trade Cunningham, who just got the contract extension at linebacker. I would trade Whitney Merciless in a heartbeat. But yeah, I would trade J.J. Watt. I think they need to load up on draft picks and start a short-term rebuild. Harold, just a nice note. Thank you for the note on Patreon. Here we go. With the emergence of Jesse Bates, what do you see the main problem with the Bengals defense? Heard me say they're a very lackluster bottom-tier defense, so it's interesting what I think the problems are. Also, ESPN doesn't know anything. Agreed. The Bengals' defensive problems. Well, they don't necessarily have a superstar, right? They have a lot of star players. Having a superstar defensive player is, it does matter, because those are the types of players. A superstar player is a player that consistently takes away or at least counters a number one guy. Someone that might demand a double team, whether it's a receiver or inversely, if you're a defensive lineman that does demand a double team. A true superstar player that's going to consistently win one-on-one matchups, that's kind of the way I look at a superstar. It changes game plans, right? If you just have a team of 11 really solid players, it doesn't really change your dynamic. But if you have a Myles Garrett, or the way Jair Alexander is playing this year, or a linebacker that just patrols the middle of the field like Bobby Wagner, it's going to force the way you play. If you just have, William Jackson, who's a good player, even Jesse Bates isn't a game-breaking player. If you have good pass rushers but aren't necessarily elite number one guys like Carl Lawson and Dunlap, when you go into that matchup, there's no one you're really circling and saying, we got to make sure we take care of this. And inversely, the defense knows that you're going to have to adjust your game plan around this guy. That hurts. Overall, though, I think their defense will be fine. There's about 20 bad defenses in the NFL right now. The Bengals are a little old. They're a little slow. But the linebackers are playing better the last couple weeks. That was a big problem in the first 2 weeks. Their tackling was just horrendous, especially against the Browns. But their tackling was much better. Logan Wilson was a good pick in the third round. Relatively speaking, I'd rather they've gone with an offensive lineman. But I think he'll turn things around and help the middle of the field there. The other guy they have is starting to play better too. I think the Bengals will be fine. They just could benefit from getting a little younger and potentially adding a superstar pass rusher. Geno Atkins isn't quite that anymore. But it's a tough year to play defense without the crowds and all that. And a lack of practice time to get better at tackling. I would also say the Bengals schematically don't do anything that really wows you. They're pretty vanilla. That doesn't help. This is from Davis. He wants to know if I plan on continuing my Duke Dynasty on my TFG Plays account. Yes, I do. I've just been so busy. I do plan on doing a stream either Friday or Saturday for sure. Definitely. Maybe both. But yeah, definitely. Want to get back to that on Twitch. All right, from Justin Oakes. Since the NFL is more of an offensive league now, how much do you need to invest in defensive talent to win Super Bowls? Tough question. It's a unique year. I think that without crowds and less practice time, it's definitely favoring the offenses that have that continuity. I think we'll see the return of defense once crowds return, because that really matters. You're seeing it every week with the hard counts, with the ability to control pass rushes with the snap, and the ability for offenses to have open communication. I think it all really helps. And you also don't get that adrenaline rush from the defense. So I think it all plays into helping the offense much more than the defense. Because defense is much more about call play, run around, hit people, play fast, and don't lose your assignment. Whereas offense is much more of a mental game. So we got through those pretty quickly. I want to maybe do some Instagram mailbag questions, because we have not had these for a while, and I don't know if I have any new ones. You can always, if you are not a patron, you can always try to send in some Instagram DMs. They just might not get priority. But here's one from Landon. Should the Steelers trade for Le'Veon Bell? No, I don't think that'll solve their problems. For one, he's injured right now. But I was talking about how they need an explosive running game. And not that I don't like Le'Veon Bell, but I don't think he's the explosive element that they need. I think they're getting enough of that from James Conner, and hopefully they can keep getting McFarland going. All right. This one's from Micah. With Bill O'Brien getting fired, who are the top head coaching candidates, and who should they go after? Bieniemy would be great with Deshaun. Yeah, I tweeted this out. I like Bieniemy for sure. I do think Houston is an interesting appeal for the two top college prospects. Whether it is obviously the Oklahoma guy, Lincoln Riley. He's kind of a local. He grew up in Texas. Wouldn't be a huge move for him. He gets Deshaun Watson. It'd be an interesting appeal to him. Also, Spencer Rattler does not seem like the answer at Oklahoma. Could be a good opportunity for Lincoln Riley to get out while his name is, still hot. I mean, he could practically control the entire organization, especially after seeing the success of Rule, and hopefully Cliff Kingsbury continues to have a good year. I mean, he could have the keys to the organization if he wanted them. And then, what's the Clemson coach? Dabo Swinney. He has obvious ties to Deshaun Watson. He once called Deshaun Watson Michael Jordan of the NFL. And he's losing his quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. Could this be a great opportunity for Dabo to come into the NFL? I don't know if that's ideal or not. I've never been overly impressed by Dabo as a football coach. He's an excellent recruiter and a great culture guy. He would have to hire some good staff, but could be an option. I think it'd be better than Bill O'Brien. But yeah, I think Eric Bieniemy would be a great option. He's going to be, I think, a very hot candidate. Another option I floated out there would have been Matt Eberflus. He's the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. You sometimes see interdivision stealing of coaches like that. Could be an option for them. But that's going to be an interesting rebuild for the Texans, to be sure. All right. Interesting. Spence says, what is Joe Burrow's ceiling? And then he also says, the reason for Blake Martinez playing bad in Green Bay is his nutrition, and he's allergic to certain foods. Has made him more athletic now that he's gotten under it, so that's why he's playing better. I mean, he does look a little more spry out there. If that's true, that would make sense. Nutrition's really important. And then Joe Burrow's ceiling, I don't know if he will ever be as good as Mahomes, Rodgers, or Russ right now, where we're seeing all-time elite quarterback play from, frankly, all three of them. I could see him being the fourth guy behind those three, and if Russ and Rodgers get aged out, him being right there with Mahomes. I mean, as I've said, he's Tom Brady from the waist up and Aaron Rodgers from the waist down. I think he very realistically could be a better quarterback pound for pound than Tom Brady. I don't think he'll have the same success as Joe Burrow, or as in Cincinnati. I don't think he'll have the same success, but I think his ceiling is extremely high, top 5 for sure. But the other thing is, I don't know how much better he's going to get. Like, I think he's already amazing. I don't think he'll ever have the full command of the entire field in the passing game in the ways that some of these top quarterbacks do. This is kind of a question about what do I look for when I watch film. I get a lot of questions about what I look for when I watch film. I mean, it's different for every position. It's too much to answer in a mailbag question. I mean, that's the type of thing. You know, he says, what do you look for in a player when you watch film to determine if they're a good player or not? Do you have any advice to be a better film watcher? Yeah, I mean, I would have to write a book. But, I mean, my answer, you're not going to like my answer, but it really is you just have to watch a ton of film. You can read about schemes. That always helps. I've talked about how there's certain archetypes. There's your superstar players that can do everything, and then you have certain archetypes that are going to be good scheme fits. But that really just comes from understanding schemes, watching a ton of film, listening to podcasts, soaking up as much as you can. You really, to me, develop an eye for things, and you really are just comparing everything in your mind, saying, oh, this looked like something another player did. That worked in this scheme. And just, you know, it's a massive Rubik's Cube of putting stuff together. From Taylor. Again, these are all on Instagram. My Instagram is Marcus-Whitman, right? Sorry, I lied. Rewind. Blah, 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 blah. It's Whitman_Marcus is my Instagram. So you can always send in mailbag questions through Instagram. I can't promise I get to them. If you want to guarantee mailbag questions, do it on Patreon. So from Taylor, this will be the last one here. What do you think of the rookie wide receiver class through the first 3 to 4 weeks, depending when I read this? Any standouts, underperformers, or surprises? Well, obviously Justin Jefferson is popping off. He's a total stud. I am really impressed by what I saw from Jerry Jeudy. I think he is a quarterback away from being a top 5, top 10 receiver. Reminds me so much of Keenan Allen, Devonta Adams as these quick separators, elite route runner types. You've got CeeDee Lamb has been about what I expected. He's really good with the ball in his hands, explosive player, good, not great route runner, good hands. And then Henry Ruggs, I was worried about Henry Ruggs with injuries because this is a historical trend for these slender receivers to get banged up. And I compared him to Deshaun Jackson, and I think he will be that in every sense of the word. I could see him dealing with these injuries that keep him out. Will Fuller, John Ross, Deshaun Jackson, even I want to say Marquise Brown has been banged up since he got drafted, on and off. When you're that slender, that speed comes at a price. Your body is just not going to be built like some of these other guys. So I would be worried about that with Ruggs, but when he's on the field, he's a stud. Brandon Ayuk is everything as advertised, as a guy that just find a way to get the ball in his hands. I didn't like his route running. I didn't necessarily like his vertical ability, his release at the line of scrimmage per se, but put him with Kyle Shanahan where he's going to get him involved on jet sweeps and screens and just find ways to get him the ball. You know, we call it double Debos. They did a lot of that stuff with Deebo Samuel when they drafted him. That's looking like a great fit. I said at the time, I'm going to end up looking wrong on this guy because he landed with the absolute perfect team. So I think that's what we're seeing with Brandon Ayuk. Van Jefferson with the Rams has certainly played well with his opportunities, but they just are so deep that he's not getting on the field. But I really like him. He's shown flashes. Laviska Shenault has been about as good as advertised as far as that short to intermediate weapon. They're being creative with him like I wanted to see. Devin Duvernay, the explosive kick returner, I think they could use him more in the passing game. think that's it. I mean, honestly, I feel pretty good about what I said about all these receivers. I would say the one guy that's exceeding expectations would be Justin Jefferson, though I did like him quite a bit. So that is going to be the mailbag. Thank you guys for tuning in. I am going to be on the Strong Opinion Sports podcast. As of this moment, I did record it, and it is awesome. Zach Schaumler is just a great dude, and I had so much fun talking football. We went like 45 minutes. We wanted to just go like 15. So I don't know if this podcast will be this podcast will be out first. So if you've made it this far, definitely go check out Strong Opinion Sports on YouTube, and that little appearance by me should be over there. So thank you guys for watching. If you're on YouTube, please do hit that like button. If you are listening to the podcast version on your podcast platforms, leave a review. Consider contributing to the show and getting access to the Patreon mailbag and other exclusive content like my weekly picks on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. But peace out, everyone, and we'll see you later.